In last session, we were discussing human plague. Some part is remaining. So in this session, we will first complete the remaining part of human plague and then we will finish with the plague in rodents. In last session, we discussed control of cases, control of fleas, control of rodents. Now, let's proceed further and try to understand vaccination. For immunization, we use plague vaccine, and immunization with plague vaccine is the most valuable preventive measure. What is the recommendation of World Health Organization regarding use of plague vaccine? So as per recommendation of World Health Organization, plague vaccine should be used only for the purpose of prevention and not for controlling the outbreaks or epidemics of plague. What is the guideline for conducting immunization with plague for its prevention? This guideline includes administration of 2 doses of plague vaccine at least 1 week before the anticipation of an outbreak or epidemic. Which vaccine is available for plague immunization? For plague immunization, we are having killed vaccine, and this is formalin killed vaccine. How many doses we are supposed to give? There are 2 doses. And what is the interval between these 2 doses? The interval between these 2 doses, it should be 7 days to 14 days. Or the same thing you can say it can be 1 week to 2 weeks. Thus, as per guideline, we are supposed to administer 2 doses of formalin killed vaccine at an interval of 1 to 2 weeks. By which route we are supposed to give plague vaccine? This formalin killed plague vaccine, it is given by subcutaneous route. So, as per the guidelines, primary immunization schedule consists of administration of 2 doses of formalin killed vaccine at an interval of 1 to 2 weeks by subcutaneous route. What is the guideline for booster doses? Whether we are supposed to give booster dose or not. So as per the recommendation, booster doses should be given only to those people who are having higher risk or who are having continuous risk of infection. So what are examples of such peoples? So these peoples, they include geologists, anthropologists, biologists. These are the people which are having continuous risk of infection. So booster dose is recommended only for these people. Booster dose should be given after every 6 months. Let us try to understand what is the guideline for travelers vaccination as far as plague is concerned. Now if the travelers they are traveling to hyper endemic areas, it is essential that these travelers they should take plague vaccine. Can you recall by which route we are supposed to administer this vaccine? Yes, we are giving it by subcutaneous route. So this is injectable route. Now whenever the vaccines are given by injectable route, there are certain adverse things or certain local reactions that can appear. These local reactions, it includes pain and tenderness. So sometimes patient or the vaccinee may complain of pain and tenderness at the site of injection. And few vaccinee they also complains of headache. So these are the few adverse effects that can occur after vaccination with killed plague vaccine. Let's see dosage of plague vaccine. Regarding dosage of plague vaccine, try to understand that the dose of the vaccine it differs if we are carrying primary immunization or if we are carrying booster immunization. In addition to whether we are carrying primary immunization or whether we are carrying booster immunization, the dose of plague vaccine it also differs for infants, for children and for adults. Even in adults, it differs for adult males and adult females. Even it is important to understand that the dose of plague vaccine it differs when we are giving the first dose and when we are giving the second dose. The dose to be administered is more for the second dose as compared to the first dose. If you observe this table carefully, what you can see in primary vaccination, the first dose, and in booster vaccination, which we recommend after every 6 months, the doses are same for infants, children, adult females as well as for adult males. Please note the change for second dose. We are increasing the second dose. Regarding this vaccine, another important thing to understand is though we said here infants, but remember this plague vaccine it is not recommended up to 6 months of age. So we will start administration of plague vaccine after 6 months. From 6 months up to 4 years of age, under primary immunization, the first dose we will give of 0.2 ml. Now what we are supposed to do for second dose? Double the dose. So now it will become 0.4 ml. And what is the guideline for booster dose? It is same as that of first dose. So it is again 0.2 ml. If you have child for plague immunization between 5 to 10 years of age, now you will advise primary first dose of 0.3 ml. Can you calculate the second dose? For children we are supposed to double it. So it becomes 0.6 ml. And what can be the booster dose? The booster dose will be same as that of first primary dose. So it is 0.3 ml. If the age of child is between 11 years to 16 years, under primary immunization, first dose is 0.4 ml. So I think you can calculate second dose. Obviously it is 0.8 ml. And booster if required, it is 0.4 ml. For adult males, we will administer first dose under primary immunization of 1 ml. Second dose is 1.5 ml and booster dose is again 1 ml. For adult females, the dose of plague vaccine is less as compared to the dose of adult males. So first dose under primary immunization for adult females is 0.75 ml. Second dose is of 1 ml and booster dose is again of 0.75 ml. Before proceeding to chemoprophylaxis, let's recall what we discussed yesterday. We discussed about control of cases of plague. So whenever our aim is to control the plague cases in the community, what we do? We prefer early diagnosis and treatment. For treatment, we can use different drugs like tetracycline, streptomycin, or even we can use gentamicin. But we are not using penicillin. And in case if tetracycline, streptomycin, or even gentamicin is not available, sulfonamides can also be used. This is for cases. Now what we can do for the contacts. I think you know meaning of contacts. So these are all those persons which exposed to a case of plague in such a way that they may acquire infection. Such people generally includes healthcare workers or household members. So there is possibility that these contacts they may acquire plague infection. So now our focus is on these contacts and our aim is to prevent plague in such contacts. So how this can be done? So for this, the measure which is taken is known as chemoprophylaxis. So in chemoprophylaxis, we administer the antibacterial agent. Now here we are selecting antibacterial agent because plague is caused by Yersinia pestis, which is bacteria. What is the drug of choice for chemoprophylaxis of plague? The drug of choice for chemoprophylaxis of plague is tetracycline. The alternative drug that we can use, it includes sulfonamides. So drug of choice is tetracycline. If tetracycline is not available, alternative drug we can use is sulfonamide. What is the guideline for administration of tetracycline? For adults, tetracycline, it is given for 5 days. Its dose is 500 milligram and the dose of tetracycline, it is repeated after every 6 hours. So in 24 hours, we are supposed to advise to the contacts to take total 4 doses. Each dose is of 500 milligram. If we are using sulfonamides for chemoprophylaxis, its dose is high. It is about 2 grams to 3 grams daily and it should be given for 5 days to 7 days. So to summarize, we said drug of choice is tetracycline. We are giving daily 2 grams of tetracycline in divided doses for 5 days. Whereas if we are using alternative cheaper option, sulfonamides, its dose is 2 to 3 grams and its duration is 5 to 7 days. Next control measure is surveillance. First, let us try to understand why and where surveillance is essential. Surveillance is essential because plague has potential to spread into susceptible areas. And which areas we can call it as susceptible areas? It includes all those areas where natural foci of plague is present or there is history of past infection. Try to understand one more reason why surveillance is essential. Whatever information is provided after surveillance, this information is very valuable and this information helps to control the plague effectively. Hence, surveillance is very essential in controlling plague. The surveillance activities, it covers various aspects related to plague in rodents as well as plague in humans. The surveillance activities, it covers microbiological aspects, serological aspects, entomological aspects, and even it covers epidemiological as well as ecological aspects. Next control measure is health education, and health education is very essential part of plague control program. So here education is given to general public, and regarding what we are supposed to educate the people. So all the general population or general public or the people, they should know different facts related to the plague. And the most important thing, they should be educated for a reporting of the dead rats very promptly, as well as they should be educated to report the suspected human cases as early as possible. In addition to general population, it is very essential that the medical practitioners, whenever they are dealing with the cases of fever which are associated with lymphadenitis or lymphadenopathy, or whenever they are dealing with the cases of pneumonia, what is the differential diagnosis? So medical practitioners must be aware with the differential diagnosis related to cases of fever associated with lymphadenopathy as well as cases of pneumonia. Let's try to understand epidemiological investigations in plague. Basically, epidemiological investigations are very closely related to epidemiological surveillance. So, it is essential to conduct the surveillance. Now, what things or what data is collected? So, it includes collection of data related to movements of the population, occupations of the people, what are the various customs, what are the various habits that are related to the people. Specifically, the focus is given on the rural areas or the villages. And the surveillance team, they should have direct communication with the villagers so that it helps to identify source of infection, to study distribution of the plague, and it also helps to see the potential spread of plague in human population. During surveillance, it is very important to pay attention to all those factors which can bring the vector and the man close together. Here, vector of plague is rat fleas or rarely human fleas, and host is man. So whatever various factors are there by which there is increased contact between man and vector should be taken into consideration during surveillance. Now, in addition to the focus of surveillance activities on those factors which are bringing together man and vector, one should not forget to focus on its reservoir. So, surveillance activities must also be focused on its reservoir, which are mainly wild rodents. In order to understand all these factors, it is very essential to understand the responsibilities of surveillance team. So let us try to understand what are various responsibilities of surveillance team. These responsibilities includes detailed study of all cases of human plague, completion of records of each case of plague, identification of source of infection, in addition, isolation of its causative agent, that is Yersinia pestis, by collecting different samples, conducting serological survey. Why it is essential to conduct serological survey? If serological survey is conducted, it helps in identification of subclinical cases or asymptomatic cases, or even It helps to identify those people which recovered without taking treatment. In addition, the responsibilities includes investigations of human populations. The investigations should be carried out in such a way so that it should help to identify all those factors which brings the human population in contact with the commensal rats. The surveillance team should focus on the cargoes of the grain, food crops. In addition, if there are two or more than two countries where natural foci are common, they should conduct the surveillance in cooperation with one another. In addition, it is very important to pay attention to those seaports or those airports which are located near to the natural foci. Surveillance team has one more important responsibility. If outbreak of plague occurs, they should be able to carry out treatment of the affected people. In addition, they should be able to carry out different control measures and preventive measures. How to report cases or outbreaks of plague? As per the guidelines given by World Health Organization, even if there is occurrence of single case of plague or there is occurrence of outbreak or an epidemic, it is mandatory to report it to the World Health Organization. Before reporting to World Health Organization, our responsibility is to report it to the local authority. And whenever we report any disease to nearby local health authority, what we call it as? It is notification. So remember, plague is notifiable disease, and whenever you will come across a case of plague, it is your responsibility to notify it to nearby health authority. So reporting of plague, it includes detailed report. This detailed reports, it includes the map, and on this map the locality should be shown. In addition, it is important to mention the date when first case was noticed. The time period when field investigations are conducted, it is important to mention this time period. Regarding reporting of cases, total number of cases should be reported. What type of case it is, it should be specified. Whether the diagnosis is made on clinical background or whether confirmed a diagnosis was done, it should be mentioned in the report. If patients have been recovered, this recovery patients should also be mentioned in the report. Along with recovery report, it is important to mention the number of deaths if deaths have occurred. In addition to cases, it is important to pay attention to the contacts. So regarding contacts, whatever test results are available related to serological test or related to throat swab test, all these results must be mentioned in the report. The report further includes chemotherapy given to the cases. So total number of cases who received chemotherapy should be mentioned. In addition, total number of contacts who received chemoprophylaxis should also be mentioned. Finally, our report should include details of vector population. So which vector is identified, like say for example Xenopsilla chiopsis. Is there any other species which is involved in transmission? It is important to do the insecticide test and to identify whether these vectors, they are showing resistance to any insecticides, and at the same time whatever different control measures are applied for controlling the vector should also be mentioned in the report. So this is about human plague. So till now we discussed human plague. To recall some part related with this plague, as we said, it is bacterial zoonosis. Causative organism is Yersinia pestis. Vector involved is infected rat flea, and outbreak of plague has been reported in India in 2004. Now regarding Yersinia, we have seen that these organisms, they are capable of surviving, multiplying in the soil of rodent burrows. And among the rodents, the most important reservoirs are only wild rodents. Domestic rodents are not playing any role as a reservoir in plague. The source of infection for plague, it can be infected rodents, it can be infected fleas, or even it can be human cases of pneumonic plague. Now this is the disease which we can find in all age groups, and movement of people by any route, whether it is by sea route or whether it is by land route or by air route, it helps in spread of infection. Now again, to recall seasonal pattern of plague, which is mainly seen in northern India, so where we call it as plague season. So this plague season in northern India, it is from September till May. Now from May, what happens? These rodents hibernate, and they remain on the food reserves that which are stored in their burrows, and again from mid of October they become active, and this typical plague season we can find in northern India. No such plague season we can find in southern India. Transmission of plague, it can occur mainly if the temperature is 20 to 25 degrees Celsius or relative humidity is of 60%. So these are most favorable conditions for the spread of plague. Rat flea is the vector, and there are many types of fleas. These can be rat fleas, these can be cat and dogs fleas, sand flea, etc. But out of these fleas, only rat flea are involved in transmission of plague. And these rat fleas, they includes Xenopsila chiopsis, Xenopsila astia, Xenopsila brasiliensis, and the human flea which is involved is Pulex irritans. So these are the fleas which are involved in transmission of plague. So these fleas can transmit a disease in rodents also and in humans also, and at the same time both male and female fleas, they can transmit the plague bacilli. Now most important, whatever these fleas are there, the fleas which are blocked fleas, whether they are partially blocked or whether they are completely blocked, they are effective vectors. Now again, if you do comparison between partially blocked flea and completely blocked flea, more effective will be partially blocked flea, because the reason is completely blocked fleas, they die very soon, whereas partially blocked fleas, they have longer life. And as you know, there are plague bacilli which are present in the stomach, which are multiplying in the stomach of these fleas. They are causing obstruction, so food cannot enter, and as a result these fleas, they feel very hungry, and due to hunger they violently and quickly and repeatedly bites the person. So this behavior of rat fleas or blocked fleas to be specifically, plays most important role in disease transmission. Now as we said, plague is the disease which we can find in both. So the disease is found in rodents also, and disease is found in human also. We completed with the human plague, and now let us try to understand plague in rodents. So how we can get, or what different patterns of plague can be seen in rodents? So basically plague, primarily if you think, it is infection of rodents. Now man or human is accidentally involved. So in nature this is primary infection of rodents, and involvement of man will be accidental. Now as we are dealing with rodents, let us try to understand how many species of rodents are there. So as per knowledge, there are about 1700 species of rodents known. Out of these, 200 species are associated with plague. So this number is quite big. I repeat, it is more than 200 species of rodents which are associated with plague. Now where do we find these rodents? So these rodents, they have global distribution. They are present throughout the world. We can find them in deserts, we can find them in mountains, forests, and even cultivated areas, or simply we can say farms. So they are present in farms also, forests also, mountains also, deserts also, and again these are present throughout the world. So possibility of plague throughout the world is there, as long as infection and in these rodents, if it exists. How rodents are classified? So already we had finished with this part. Again it's a recap. Rodents are classified as wild rodents and commensal rodents. Commensal rodents, they are further classified as domestic rodents and peridomestic rodents. So wild rodents, now as compared to commensal rodents, wild rodents are playing major role in plague. Now why I am saying this? Because wild rodents are important reservoir of plague. So in nature, the natural reservoir or the most important reservoir of plague is rodents, and these are mainly wild rodents. And in India, the most important reservoir, most important wild rodent which act as reservoir is Tatera indica. Now in addition to Tatera indica, we can find other species also in India. What are these? So these species, it includes Bandicota indica, it includes Bandicota bengalensis varius, Bandicota bengalensis cock, Millardia meltada, Millardia glidovi, and Mus bujuga. So I repeat, it's Tatera, it's Bandicota, it's Millardia, and it's Mus species. So no need to memorize all these names, but at least you must know one important name of wild rodent, that is Tatera indica. Commensal rodents. So as we said, they are further classified into domestic rodents and peridomestic rodents. Domestic rodents, as we are saying it domestic, so these are the rodents which are mainly found in houses, and very rarely or seldomly they are found in fields. Now examples of such rodents, it includes Rattus rattus and Mus musculus. So Rattus rattus and Mus musculus are domestic rodent species. In peridomestic, most important species is Rattus norvegicus or Norway rat. So where do we find? So as it is peridomestic species, we can find it in houses also, and we can find it in fields also. And if you find the rats coming from sewers and drains, so this is Rattus norvegicus. So in sewers also the type of rat which we can find is Rattus norvegicus. Now one more thing to understand regarding plague in rodents is in what epidemiological pattern we can find plague in rodents. So in wild rodents, I'm talking right now about wild rodents, the distribution pattern of plague, it can be in both way, that is episodic and enzootic. What it simply means, plague can occur in epidemic form in wild rodents as well as in endemic form in these rodents. And two ecological cycles are there. So these cycles are known as wild plague and domestic plague. So how wild plague exists in nature? So wild plague, it is affecting wild rodents, and this plague spreads to other rodents which are again wild, and it spreads through wild rodent fleas. So simply we can say first chain is of wild rodents, they are affecting wild rodents, and middle chain is of wild rodent flea. So these are the fleas which we can found on the body of wild rodents. Now whenever epidemics occurs in wild rodents, what is the possibility? So majority of rodents which are susceptible to plague, they die. But what happens? The rodents which are resistant to plague, they will survive, and they will not only survive, but these are important to maintain endemicity of plague. So you got it? It's epidemic. During epidemic, wild rodents which are susceptible, they will die, but at the same time, those which are resistant to infection, they will survive and they will play important role to maintain the disease in endemic form or in endemic pattern. This is about wild plague. Now what about domestic plague? So domestic plague, as the name suggests, it is found in domestic rodents, and even if we find this in domestic rodents, they still have potential to produce epidemics. So we can observe epidemics in domestic rodents also, but in wild rodents it's epidemic and endemic. Now one more terminology which is given in K-Park is the natural focus or natural foci. Now this is defined as a strictly delimited area where ecological conditions ensure the persistence of etiological agent for considerable periods of time, and where episodics and the periods of quiescence alternate without introduction of infection from outside. What it means? Etiological agent is persistently present in the environment and infection is not introduced from outside. Now what is observed in nature? There is occurrence of episodics, or there is occurrence of epidemics among the rodents, and these epidemics are followed by period of quiescence where we can't get cases of plague. So this period of quiescence and these two alternate with one another. So there is alternate pattern of quiescence period and episodic due to presence of infectious agent. So in this, even during quiescence period, infectious agent is present in environment. Disease is not introduced from outside. Now simply to conclude in simple way, what we can say, there is persistence of plague, or plague is persistently present in our environment, and what are the various reasons for this? So one transmission, already you know, it is from rat to rat. So this rat can be wild rat or it can be domestic rat. Next rat can also be wild or domestic, and middle chain is flea. So this chain is called as rat, flea, rat, and this transmission is rat flea rat transmission. So only this transmission is not responsible for this natural foci. So there are several other factors also. So what are these factors? We are talking about why there is persistence of plague in natural foci. So one is rat flea rat transmission. In addition to that, majority of rodent, especially the rodents which are hibernating, they have latent infection, and this latent infection is for a long period and there is relapse, and whenever a relapse occurs, it can initiate epidemic. So rather than epidemic, the ideal terminology is epizootic. So whenever epidemic occurs in animal population, here we are talking of rodents, so appropriate terminology will be epizootic. So what happens? Latent infection in hibernating rodents results in a relapse, and this relapse can initiate epizootic. The rodents which are resistant to plague infection, so they harbor these plague bacilli in different parts of their body, and they can serve as source of infection. At the same time, the rat fleas in the microenvironment or microclimatic condition of rodent burrows, they can survive for very long period, which can be of 4 years. So this is longer survival of fleas where in the rat burrows. So flea vector is also present and host rat is also present in the burrow. Now at the same time, plague bacilli, these plague bacilli, they are also capable of surviving and multiplying in the soil of rodent burrows. So now can you imagine the scenario? In rodent burrows, rodents are also present, rat flea are also present with longer life of about 4 years, and Yersinia, which is causative organism of plague, it is also present in the soil. So all these factors combine, and this combination is responsible to maintain persistence of infection in nature. Epizootic process. Again, in nature, we can find specific cycles or periodic pattern of epizootic and enzootic processes. Epizootic and enzootic processes, the research is conducted related to this cyclical pattern or related to this periodical pattern. Now what this research suggests, so there are two suggestions that are given in relation to this. So one suggestion it includes is transmission of plague. It occurs from the rats which are present in burrow. So this transmission will occur from burrow to burrow, and it occurs from field to field, and transmission can spread to several miles. So what we are saying, so first is transmission of plague from one burrow to other burrow and from one field to other field, and this way plague will transmit among the rodents which are located at several miles. But this process takes few months, so it takes a bit long time, and during this transmission which is occurring among wild rodents, The peridomestic rodents which are likely to be present, like Rattus norvegicus, they may acquire infection. And so now infection is carried to houses. Now Rattus norvegicus is peridomestic species which we can found in fields also and which we can found in houses also. And whenever there is outbreak or whenever there is episodic of plague in rats, the rats may die. Now after death what happens? Fleas, they leave the dead rats and now they are forced to take their blood meal from man and man will get accidentally involved. So this is about epizootic process. One more terminology that is used in relation to plague in rodents is silent periods. So silent periods, it's quite long period of silences which is of 10 years or more, and these silence periods, they are followed by sudden explosive outbreaks. So there is silence period of longer duration. After that क्या होने वाला है? What happens is explosive outbreaks of plague, and these outbreaks can occur in rodents or it can occur in human. Now what are the possibilities of these or why this happens? So possible explanations given for this picture in nature is what happens? Plague disappears completely for longer periods and then it is reintroduced from other areas by infected rodents or infected fleas. So one possibility which is explained is whenever we are saying there is period of silence, this is long period of 10 years, during this possibility is plague is totally disappeared for this period and again from other infected areas plague is reintroduced. Second explanation is the plague bacilli, they are capable of surviving in the soil of rodent burrows. So they will survive as well as they will multiply. Now imagine there are rodent burrows and even if the rodent they died because of plague, the Yersinia organisms which are present in the soil, they can survive there, they can multiply in that burrows. And now imagine if healthy rodents enters into that burrows. Now the rat flea are also capable of surviving in the soil. Yersinia is also capable of surviving in the soil and host is healthy. So even if healthy rodents have entered, they can infect these rodents due to contact with contaminated soil. So this is one more point, that is silent periods. How plague can occur in rodents? The disease is similar in human and in animals also. So in animals it can be in inapparent form or it can be in mild form. So generally mild plague is developed by those rodents which shows resistance to plague. Now what investigations should be carried out for plague in rodents? So first investigation which is suggested is to collect and to forward the specimen of dead rats to the laboratory. So what we are supposed to do? Whenever any person, anyone finds that there is dead rat near the house or in the field, wherever it is found, in whatever stage the dead rat is, whether even if it is decomposed, such rats, they should be handled carefully. They should not be handled with bare hands. So careful handling is there and it should be packed either in packing paper or in plastic bags and it should be wrapped several times. Now after wrapping, the bag should be tied properly. Now, why it is essential to tie that bag if we are using plastic bag and if it is open, so it should be closed. What is the reason for this? So whatever ectoparasites are there, it should not escape from the rat. So appropriate closure is essential. Now such bags should be further placed in wooden box or in tin. Now in this box again we'll have to add absorbent cotton or sawdust. So why it is important to add absorbent cotton or sawdust? So if there is leakage of any fluids, any effluents, it should not leak outside the box. Okay, and then this sample should be sent to nearby laboratory. Okay, so whenever in our environment we find died rats, the responsibility is to send it in properly packed way, these rats to the laboratory. Now second is autopsy and collection of smear. Now here rat, it is dipped into 5% cresol solution. Now after dipping rat into 5% cresol solution, wooden board is taken, and on this wooden board we'll have to fix this rat. Now take swab, so, and clean the abdomen with Lysol or spirit swab. Now the skin is clean. Cut the portion of chest. Now these instruments are again kept into boiling water. Another set of instruments is taken. Now with another set of instruments, a small cut should be taken on viscera like spleen, liver, lungs or bubo. Now freshly cut surface, it should be blotted on blotting paper. The reason is blotting, the reason is whatever excess blood or whatever excess plasma is there, it should be removed. Now take a glass slide and gently press the tissue so that it will make impression on glass slide. Okay, so what we did, rat dipped in cresol, then abdomen is cleaned with Lysol swab or spirit swab, then skin is cut, then we'll have to cut organs, then tissues, it is gently pressed on the glass slide so that we can get impression. But rubbing is strictly contraindicated, so these tissues must not be rubbed on glass slides. Now in case if dead animal is completely decomposed and the tissues are not available for examination, so in such case bone marrow smears are prepared. Now once smear is prepared, it is dried, then it is treated with alcohol for 3 to 4 minutes, then it should be taken 3-4 times through the open flame. Now as you know, when we do this process, it will help to fix the smear. So now we have fixed smear with us, and now this fixed smear slides should be sent to laboratory. But the persons who are doing all these processes must be very careful, as they are having higher risk of developing plague. So we said whenever we find any dead rat, it should be sent to the laboratory. Then second, it's autopsy and collection of smear and send it to the laboratory. Third thing is animal inoculation. Now animal inoculation, whenever it is not possible to isolate plague bacilli by culture methods, this technique is used. So what is done, in this small portion of liver or spleen, it is taken and it is introduced into other mouse. Before that, it is ground in mortar with normal saline or with little amount of saline, and then it is inoculated into guinea pig or white mouse. Now if there is plague infection, white mouse, it dies just in 2 days, whereas guinea pig will die in 7 days. So animal tissue inoculation either in guinea pig or white mouse If plague bacilli are present, death of these animals can occur. Now last investigation, it includes observation of pathological changes in infected animals. So those animals which are infected with plague, they may show certain pathological changes which includes edema and necrosis, then lymph node enlargement, spleen enlargement, necrotic patches are seen, then liver shows mottling, lungs shows some necrotic lesions and hemorrhages. So these are various pathological changes. So this is about rodents and plague in rodents. Let's have a recap of plague in rodents. Plague is primarily a disease of rodents and man is accidentally involved. There are more than 200 species of rodents which are associated with plague. The rodents are classified into two groups. First group is wild rodents and second group is commensal rodents. The important and major reservoir of plague are wild rodents. In India, the most important reservoir is Tatera indica. How we divide commensal rodents? Commensal rodents, they are further divided into domestic species and peridomestic species. The peridomestic species we can found in houses as well as in the fields. The important example of peridomestic species is Rattus norvegicus. Example of domestic species includes Rattus rattus and Mus musculus. In wild rodents, plague may occur either in epizootic or enzootic form, that is, either in the form of epidemic or endemic. Simply, we can say epidemic distribution pattern as well as endemic distribution pattern we can observe in wild rodents as far as plague is concerned. The ecological cycles of plague includes two cycles, wild plague and domestic plague. How wild plague is defined? Wild plague is defined as the plague existing in nature independent of human populations and independent of human activities. Wild plague, it spreads among wild rodents and it spreads by wild rodent fleas. Domestic plague, it is defined as the plague which is immediately associated with man and rodents living with man. The characteristic feature of domestic plague is it has definite potential to produce epidemics. What is meaning of natural focus? Natural focus means there is alteration of periods of quiescence and epizootics. In addition to this, there is persistence of etiological agent for considerably long period of time. In natural plague focus, we can find two processes, epizootic process and enzootic process. And these processes, they show specific cyclical and periodical pattern. What type of transmission we can see in these cyclical processes? The transmission is from burrow to burrow and field to field. And during this transmission, commensal rodents, they are affected from wild rodents. Most commonly affected commensal rodent is Rattus norvegicus, which is peridomestic rodent. It is important to note here that human plague is always preceded by rodent plague, and therefore if there is increased or unusual mortality among the rodents is observed in our surroundings, it should arouse suspicion of plague. And in such cases, immediate epidemiological investigation should be started. What is meaning of silence periods? So periods of silences or silent period, it is very long period which is about 10 years or more. So this is the period when plague disappears completely and it is followed by explosive outbreaks of rodent or human plague. For investigating plague in rodents, it is very important to forward the dead rodents carefully to the laboratory. At the laboratory, fixed smears are prepared from the tissues or from the bone marrow. The other methods in diagnosis includes animal inoculation and observing the pathological changes.